Okay, so let's talk about the present continuous. Present continuous is the tense that's formed with to be plus ing construction. So you are watching this lesson. And the continuous construction part is right here, are watching. Okay. So the most interesting question about this, if you have even just basic understanding of English, is what the meaning actually is. Now, if you ask most people what the meaning is, the answer you get is now. And this is actually not a very good way to think about it, in my opinion. The reason is because, well, it just doesn't work. It doesn't help you very much to understand the situations when you should use a continuous and when you shouldn't. And when you think about it this way, the problem is that you end up using the continuous too much. You use it, for example, in a situation like this. Like I am traveling a lot. Or let's make it even a clear example. I'm traveling every weekend. Traveling almost every weekend. Now, if you have this definition of now, you look at the situation, well, that's true now, isn't it? And so you want to use a continuous here, but this is not a correct situation to use a continuous. So obviously this definition doesn't work all the time. Let's look at a couple of other examples. All right, now this is a case where we use the continuous when we aren't doing something right now. So right here we have a case where something is true now. It seems like we should use a continuous, but we shouldn't. And here we have a case where something is not happening right now, actually, and we should use a continuous for this case. So here's another situation where this definition is not working very well. Also, if we say something like the Earth goes around the sun, here's another thing that is happening right now. And this is really physically happening. The Earth is moving every moment for billions of years around the sun, has been for billions of years around the sun. This is something that is happening right now, but we still do not use a continuous in this case. All right. So what would a better definition of continuous be? Well, let's look at some sentences. So all right, so here we have two sentences. These sentences are exactly the same as each other. The only difference is that this one is in the simple here, and this one is in the continuous. So, and there's a difference in meaning between these. So if we know what this difference in meaning is, then this will show us actually what the difference in meaning between the two tenses is. And the difference in meaning that a native speaker hears between these two sentences is that the second sentence, in the second sentence, the activity of the verb is a temporary activity. And this is basically always the difference between the simple and the present simple and the present continuous. If we have a temporary activity that we want to talk about as a temporary activity, so if we want to say, in other words, that something is a temporary activity, then we should use the continuous. If we don't want to say so, or if we can't say so, it's not logical to say so, then we should use the present simple. Now notice this word here, activity. This is going to be important when we talk about state verbs, which we will do in our next video. The verb will have to be an activity. If we're just describing a state, the way things are, then our best strategy is going to be to use the present simple in those cases also. So we need something that is not only temporary, but a temporary activity to use the continuous. All right, and so what we end up having is, if we want a very simple difference that is much better than the now or not right now difference. Okay, so we mentioned this before. A lot of people think about the continuous as just now or not now, and we've seen that does not work very well. And I mean, in these examples, doesn't work well. And my experience also, when I see that people think about it this way, there are a lot of mistakes. And to improve those mistakes, you need to think about it this way. It does really work to think about it this way instead. And the difference now that you want to think about is the difference between temporary or not temporary. All right. So, by the way, this not temporary does not mean permanent. It's not equals symbol. This is not equal to permanent. It just means that you are not saying that it's temporary. You're kind of, if you use a simple, you're kind of saying nothing about that. So if we look at these examples here, if I say I live in Europe, I could know that this is a temporary thing. I could know that I'm only going to live in Europe for the next 6 months, for example. But I don't really have to add that meaning. I don't have to put it in there. This one here too. You actually, we'll see, actually we'll look at this example again, but we could say that, we could talk about that in a temporary way. We could add that temporary meaning. So the fact that we don't add it doesn't change the situation. It's still the same situation. It still could be temporary, but we just don't have that meaning in there. So I hope you can see that that means that if you don't put it in there, it does not mean that it is a permanent thing. We're just here, if we use the continuous, we're saying temporary. We're saying it's temporary. All right, so this is what we want to understand. So let's look at some examples. So we could say that he is reading a book about the 17th century. And why did we, the question is, why did we use the temporary in this case? Well, the reason is because you only read a book for a certain period of time, and then either you finish reading it or you just, you stop without finishing. So one way or another, this is going to end, and it's therefore going to be a temporary thing. If you say he reads a lot, now there's nothing in this situation that is really temporary. In other words, we don't know about an ending to this. We don't know about an ending to this. All right, this is it's a really good other angle to look at it from. So we can say either we know about an ending, or 2, we don't know about an ending. And we have to be careful of this. It's not just knowing about an ending, but it's knowing about a relevant or important, you can say, ending, or meaningful, I don't know, for the situation. All right, and then these same words for the other one. Okay, so, I mean, of course, maybe he'll get old and his eyesight will go bad, or his habits will change in life. We expect this kind of thing to change. In the end, everybody, life is not forever. So, of course, pretty much everything is going to end. But the question is there an ending here that's important, or that's relevant, or that matters, that people care about in this situation? Now, in this one, yes, there's an ending here pretty soon. He's going to finish it or he's going to quit. Like we said, here, there's no ending that we know about in some kind of relevant period of time. There could be. All right, let's look at another sentence. If we talk about this, if we said he is reading a lot right now because he has exams coming up. Now, we would use a continuous here. It's exactly the same kind of idea. Somebody reading a lot habitually, meaning like it's a repeated kind of activity for a period of time, but this period of time overall is temporary. So this is really the difference. In that case, we would use a continuous because this would be a temporary thing. All right, so this is another point that is worth making about the kind of wrong meaning. Repeated or habitual activity. This is another thing you learn. You learn right now, okay, but except for this habitual activity. And that's why this one right here, I'm traveling almost every weekend. That's why if you remembered everything that you were taught very well, then you would use the simple here, and then that would be right. But the reason we want to think about it this way is just because it's simpler. Okay, if you do remember every single little detail of the rules, then you get pretty close to the truth. You can speak pretty well. But as we see with this one, that actually doesn't even work all the time either, because here we have an habitual action. Okay, so this is both simpler and it is it's both simpler and it works better. You just have a higher accuracy rate. Okay, so let's look at another example where we think about this. Relevant kind of time period, important kind of time period. Let's look at this Earth around the Sun example again. Okay, so as we mentioned, this is another case where, like we had with live here, where both of these things are basically exactly the same, except for the difference in the tense used. And they are both possible. So either we're adding this temporary meaning in there or we're not adding it in there. And usually we would not, with this idea, we would not add it in there because this will not stop or end for a very, 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 very long time, billions of years. It's supposed to be. Right? So most of the time we're not really interested in the ending to this, just like we're not interested in the ending to him reading a lot. But if we're having a different kind of discussion, if we were talking in a larger context, with a bigger time frame, or we're talking about a situation over a longer period of time, in the billions of years, in the future of the galaxy and the solar system and everything, then it would be it would fit to use continuous in that case. So let's look at a couple of more examples. Right. So why do we use the continuous here? Because language is something that is kind of like reading a book. You do it and you kind of finish doing it. I mean, that's kind of really never happens with a language where you totally learn it, but you can get pretty close. And you either do that, you get pretty close, or you quit learning, which is another possibility. It's like a book. So one way or another, this is a temporary thing in a relevant time period, in an important, meaningful time period. Now, in this one, he learns something new in his new job every day. Now, this one could actually go both ways. If we take this one, if this word out, then it fits a little bit better. So a person might have some kind of job where there's a lot of new things happening and they learn a lot of new things all the time. And we might not know about an ending to this. If we don't know an ending to this, like we said, if we don't know about an ending, then it really just is not logical to talk about the thing in a temporary way, and we shouldn't. Right? Another example. We talk every day. We are talking right now. All right. So again, we're talking right now. If you're talking to somebody right now, and if you haven't seen this already, the reason that we use the continuous for things that are happening right now is not because this is the meaning of the continuous. It's because things that are happening right now, a lot of the time, are temporary things. Okay, not always, but a lot of the time these are temporary things. Now, if we talk about the Earth going around the sun, usually we don't think about this as temporary. Him learning something in his job every day, this is also something that's true right now. All of these things are true right now. But the difference between these and something like this is that it is happening only right now. Okay, so if we want to think about this a little bit more, we can take these examples again and break it down and look at all the meanings that are inside of the verb construction right here. So if we have live, what does this mean? Okay, it means we have the verb meaning, which is live, whatever that is. That's we're alive and we are in some place and we do the normal things that people do in their lives in some place. And we also have the simple time meaning, which is now. Okay, if we say am living, we still have both of these meanings. We have the verb meaning and we have the simple time meaning. But we also have this temporary meaning. So this is another meaning that is added on to the other meanings that are there. And a good way to think about this and other tenses too, is that when we use these kinds of complex tenses, we're always going to use them we're always going to use them inside of a simple tense. So complex tenses can only exist inside simple tenses, and there are only two simple tenses, which is going to be either present or past. So they can only exist inside of these tenses, and what they do is they add meaning to these simple tenses. So if you think about this again, we had the verb meaning and we had the simple time meaning, and all we did by using the continuous is we added the temporary meaning on top of that. I explain this to people, or I recommend thinking about this like a pizza or a sandwich that you're adding something to. I think a pizza is a good example. So to have a pizza, you have to have bread, you have to have sauce, and you have to have cheese. If it's a normal pizza, it's really a pizza. And just like in order to have a verb, you need to be in either the past or the present. You need to be in one of these two times. So if you don't have past or present, you don't have a normal verb and you don't have a sentence. Just like if you don't have bread, sauce, and cheese, you don't have a pizza. And what you can do with these basic verb constructions, simple present and simple past, is you can add extra meanings to them, just like you can add extra ingredients to a pizza. So we have two pizzas. We have a simple present and simple past. We can add other meanings to these. We can add future meaning. We can add perfect. We can add continuous, and we can add passive and simple past. You can add the same. And by the way, you can add any combination of these. Just like on a pizza, you can add the ingredients together. You don't have to just add one ingredient and no others. You can add any combination that you want to, and you can do the same with these. So you can have any combination of some or all of these tenses added to either the simple present or the simple past. So the point is that is this. Simple present simple means now only. Well, let's just say it means now simply. Okay. All right. So if we look at our examples, he reads a lot. This is simply now that he reads a lot. And we don't have any other meaning in there about it being temporary, about there being a result, about it being in the future from now, or about he being the object of something, which would be the passive meaning. All right, we just simply have this. This is true now, and that's it. No comment about temporary. Okay, but if I say he is reading a book about the 17th century, okay, so we say this is true now, plus it's temporary. And another way to think about this is now, but only now. All right, so this is where the confusion comes. This is why everybody wants to say now, because it's partly right. It is now, but what you are thinking is really only now. This is the idea that you have in your head, and you can, but you're not using the right words for this, and this is confusing you in most cases. For most people, this is the problem. So, present simple, just now, no other meaning, just simply now, and not temporary, in other words. Why? Because if it was temporary, then we would have to use continuous. And present continuous is we want to say this is something now, but only now. All right, and again, this is just to say this one more time. This is a meaning that we're adding continuous. Well, continuous is what we're adding to the present meaning already, and here we're adding it and that gives our difference between the two things. Okay, so next we'll talk about, in the next video, Present Continuous 2, we'll talk about another important topic related to this, which is state verbs.